Welcome to the Vine Resources Podcast Show with your host, David Lawrence.
Welcome to another edition of the Vine Resources Podcast Show. Today, delighted to have on the line with us Jason Trost. Jason is the CEO and founder of Smarkets. Jason's joining me from LA, I think today, over in California. Jason, thanks for joining me.
Thanks very much for having me.
Jason, you've got a really interesting business across a number two continents at least. Why don't you share with our listeners a bit about the business and how you founded the company, if that's okay?
Yeah, so quick background. I studied computer science at Northwestern in the States, moved over to, right after I studied computer science, I was a trader, and I saw a website that would let you trade the presidential election, which I thought was amazing. You're going to take a normal event and trade it. Then one of my buddies was living in London, saw there was a company called Betfair, which would let you trade sports, and I thought that was pretty cool. But even with my CS background and my trading background, I thought that the tech was lacking, and the transaction fees were insane on Betfair and other sports books. So basically founded the company to bring financial technology to event trading. So our bread and butter is probably football, soccer, and horse racing, but we're definitely passionate about trading all kinds of events. We have a bunch of coronavirus markets, for example. We have markets on the presidential election and all kinds of stuff like that. So if you go to smarkets.com, you'll see a bunch of event markets. But we compete largely in the sports betting space, but we think of ourselves more as a fintech event trading company rather than a gambling company.
And who would be a typical user of the service?
Probably like your more semi-pro bettor, the person that wants the best price that they can get, that kind of your more advanced bettor is probably our main user. But we also have a lot of people who are really passionate about politics that follow our markets, and people who are just normal sports bettors that want the best price. So it's kind of a combination of different people.
And generally, before COVID, what's generally the top trading bets? What's people interested in? What's really the most on the platform?
Yeah, in terms of volume, it's horse racing and football, soccer. I'm saying let me say soccer for disambiguation. It's horse racing and soccer were the two big things. But we're also really passionate about politics. Like, we don't make money in politics. It's more of a labor of love, and we think it's really important. Politics are hard to make money from because there's not regular events that happen. It's not like a soccer game that happens for 2 hours, then it's over. Politics are more long running, like the presidential election settles in November. So there's not really money to be made in politics, but we're just as passionate about political trading as we are in sports trading.
Fantastic. Well, you've got an amazing business. As I said earlier, you've got a team over in Los Angeles, Malta, and the UK. I think going 120 strong at the moment. I know obviously we're in an unusual situation, never had before during this COVID-19 lockdown. What's a typical day in the business look like for you as a leader?
So typical day, because I'm 8 hours behind London, which our headquarters, as you said, we have about 120 people, 80 in London, 20 in Malta, and 20 in Los Angeles. When I start my day in Los Angeles, it's usually around 2 or 3 p.m. London time, so half the day's over. So a lot of my day and morning is catching up with London, emails, Slack, and trying to do calls. And then the afternoon is catching up on my personal work and then working with the LA team. So it's kind of, I kind of split my day into two halves where, around 8 to noon is London time, and 1 to quitting time is Los Angeles and personal work time.
Fantastic. And who perhaps has had an impact on you as you've grown the business? Has anyone particularly supported you, and how have they shaped the business for you? Or helped you shape the business, I should say.
There was a guy I met through my university contact who started a consulting agency. I think he was the first person I ever met in person that started his own business. So a guy by the name of Josh, he runs TableXI in Chicago. He's always been kind of a mentor of mine, where he's kind of helped me with the ups and downs. That was so some through personal contacts. I think one of the things that we take advantage of in the United States is we have a lot more, I don't know how you would call it, but I would say role models in the form of Steve Jobs, Bill Gates. A lot of them are cliches, but I remember thinking as a kid, Bill Gates, a computer nerd, was able to create this giant empire. And, even I don't know how old I was when I started knowing about Bill Gates, but probably like 8, 9, 10. And like that idea stuck in my head that you can start a company and make a lot of money from it and do really big things. So I think also beyond, besides people helping me personally, like the large icons of tech were really influential to myself for getting to becoming a tech entrepreneur ultimately.
Now, normally I'd talk about employee engagement and how important it is. It's now obviously more important than ever because many people are obviously working from home on their own. Maybe what are the things that you're doing, Jason, that's successful in the business to really keep your people engaged, particularly at this critical time?
Yeah, well, it's not easy. I have always been a person, ironically or not ironically, I've always been against working from home. I'm a big believer in human contact. Steve Jobs famously was against working from home because of the serendipitous connections that people make when they're together. We all eat lunch together. We have an amazing canteen in London with a beautiful view of St. Catherine Docks and the Thames and all that. Like we take our office environment very seriously. So it's been really tough for us from that perspective. But I will say, we're doing everything we can. Of course, everybody understands, and indeed, it's necessary to work from home now. We've been doing lots of little things to try to ameliorate the situation. From doing I do office hours. We do town halls. Some of the people have organized like virtual pub quizzes for our company, which has been quite nice. So, and then we use Google Meet quite extensively. We use Google Meet because I was in Los Angeles anyway, and that built the framework where people were kind of used to using Google Meet. But now, I'm sure our use of that has gone up by 100. But we kind of had the basis for that kind of the video conferencing stuff. So I wouldn't say we have the silver bullet. I think it's definitely something we're struggling with, but we're trying to find our way through it.
Well, obviously it's a bit of a loaded question, but what's the biggest challenge facing business leaders right now, and how do you overcome those challenges, do you think?
I wouldn't say it's a loaded question. I would say it's an overloaded question. I mean, what what isn't challenging right now? I think the biggest challenge for the world is the uncertainty. A lot of our lives are kind of geared towards, like this idea of rhythm and, anticipation of this or that, like the summer season and the holidays, and this is the important season for our business. And, that all those rules have been thrown out the window. Pretty much every industry except for a few have been negatively impacted by this crisis. I would almost say, I'm making a number up, but I would say like 97% of businesses have been negatively impacted. So I think the biggest challenge, to probably oversimplify it by a lot, is to say that we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know when things are going to go back to normal. We don't know how unemployment's going to affect the economy. We don't know what governments are going to do. We don't know how the virus is going to mutate. We don't know when testing is going to be widespread. So it's really hard to plan for, like the key, like businesses live or die based on how much money they have. And you generally try to do do a forecast to decide we have this much revenue, this much costs. But it's almost impossible to forecast right now because we, like, as a society, we just don't know. And to oversimplify it again, I think that's probably the biggest challenge, is not knowing what the future holds.
Difficult to have an answer on that one going forward. What's the best piece of business advice that you've ever been given?
I keep thinking of RuPaul, don't F it up, but what's the best piece of business advice? Probably, it wasn't given to me directly, but I'm a big fan of Paul Graham, who is the founder of Y Combinator. He's got a lot of great startup essays, but I like one of his ideas called Don't Die, which is basically like, if you stay alive, you'll find a way to thrive. And I didn't mean that to rhyme at all, by the way. But if you find, if you keep the business going and you have enough cash in the bank to keep going, you will find a market fit which will end up being successful. And I think that's one of the things that has kept Smarkets in the game. Like, we've been doing this for 12 years. We've raised $5 million over 12 years, which, a lot of companies don't raise money, but for the companies that raise money, it's almost nothing. And so we had to be very creative at just surviving. But I also think that it gave us a lot of secret strength in terms of saving money and being efficient and keeping the main thing the main thing. So I would say, yeah, just keep the business alive is one of the most important business advices I've ever received.
Now, there's a lot of doom and gloom out there at the moment. So remaining on our positive selves, what's the thing that really excites you still about your industry right now and moving forward into the future?
Well, because we do event trading, I mean, the world will continue to have events, and because we're online only, we don't have to have physical premise. So I feel very fortunate that I think our business is going to be impacted less. Like, I feel very much sympathy towards like the travel industry, for example, and the airline industry, and that just so many industries are going to be very severely impacted by this. But as soon as people start playing in stadiums, even if it's has an empty stadium with no fans, I think we'll be okay. So I'm very optimistic from our perspective that sports get back to being played with empty stadiums, and then I think our business will be back on more even footing.
How do you help your employees, your team, really help in a positive way around their well-being? What are you doing at the company?
Well, I think we try to do lots of video chats to make sure that people have that kind of human interaction. Like I said, we've been doing pub quizzes and a little bit more of the fun stuff so that people can have some chance to vent. A few people have done happy hour, Friday evening, so that they can sit and have kind of a happy hour conversation. But yeah, I mean, mental health and well-being is something that we've always been really passionate about at Smarkets. We have a few kind of mental health, I guess I would call them benefits. We pay for counseling for our staff to up to a certain point, and we also have a lot of internal chats where people can come and talk about their personal lives outside their work lives. So that's something we're continuing to do. Obviously, it's harder in a remote situation, but mental health is something that we've always taken very seriously, even before the crisis.
So there's also an occasional drink on a Friday in LA at 11 o'clock in the morning to toast with the London team.
Americans don't drink. I was in the UK for 10 years, and you would think this is a dry country coming back. The idea of having beers after work and drinking your dinner are very foreign concepts in America, especially California, where everybody wants to eat avocado and go for a run on the beach. It's not in the culture here to have after work drinks as much as it is in the UK.
Is there a story you've got from your perhaps your childhood, earlier life, that really influenced your work ethic in later life that you could share?
That's kind of a deep question. I think my dad was always very encouraging of entrepreneurship. I forget what it was called, but there was this thing where as a kid you could go around and sell like wrapping paper and gift cards and things like that. And I don't know, I must have gotten it in the mail, and I thought this was pretty cool. My dad was very supportive of helping me do that. So he, we had an early computer. I'm 39, and we were fortunate to have a computer at my house from an early age. And my dad helped me set up this kind of computer form that would make it really slick. And so I went door to door when I was, I don't know, 10, 11, 12 years old, and sold wrapping paper. And I'm sure a lot of people, did it as for sympathy for a kid, but it was really, it was a great experience because of course a lot of people said no. So you get used to that idea of rejection. And it was a great way to teach me business in the sense of like, you sell this and you make this, and, you have to go pitch your wares and put in the time. And so that was a very influential thing that I did as a kid that kind of helped me build that kind of path towards entrepreneurship.
I did mean to ask you, Jason, and throw a bit of a curveball for you, but you've obviously, I assume you've got quite complex technology sitting behind your systems. And I was just curious to know, how do you keep yourself ahead of the curve constantly to ensure that, you've got those robust systems, you're keeping up with the cutting edge technology to enable your customers to have a better, faster experience? What's your take on that?
Well, I think part of it's necessity and part of it's passion.
Mhm.
From the necessity point of view, like I said, we've raised $5 million in 12 years, so not tons of money, and I think we've generated I don't know what the tally is, but 80-90 million pounds of revenue, something like that. And so we've only been able to do that by having good technology. Like that's the only, by necessity, the only way we can compete with Betfair, Bet365, Ladbrokes, all these guys is with automation technology. And so it's just been kind of a necessity. Now, from a passion point of view, my co-founder and I were both computer science graduates. We're definitely on the geeky side of things, and I still am on the geeky side of things. And I love technology. I love upgrading. I have this weird passion of upgrading technology. I want to upgrade things more than a lot of the developers do. I'll check our version of Sentry and our version of Kubernetes that we're using, and I'll be like, hey, we got a new version out. Let's upgrade, or React Native, or those kinds of things. So I think, because the CEO is a CS major or has a CS degree and is passionate about it, I also, I pay. The companies tend to take the direction from the founder, and the founder in this instance really cares about technology. And so I think that's kind of the culture has been built up around, like, technology is really important. So like I said, it's necessity, and it's also it's something that's been really important from a passion point of view as well.
Brilliant. Jason, if you had your time again, and it wasn't that long ago, I know you're a young man, but if you had your time again, if you're 20-year-old, one piece of advice, what would you say to yourself looking back?
The thing I've underestimated the most is time. As a 20-year-old, you feel like you have infinite time. And I'm very fortunate that the business is thriving, and I'm really proud of the company, Smarkets. But I'm in year 12. I thought I would be done with this company in 2 years when I founded the company. I didn't realize how much time optimization matters. So my advice to 20-year-old self is be very conscious that time is going to go by a lot faster than you think it will.
That's for sure. Jason, thanks so much for sharing those insights and jumping on a call with me. If people want to find out more about the company, connect with you, reach out to the business, how can they do that?
They can follow me on Twitter at jasontrost.com, or you can send me an email, jason@smarkets.com.
Brilliant. Jason, thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much.
We really hope you enjoyed the podcast today. If you want to listen to more exclusive tips and life lessons from our guest, go to the resources page at vineresources.com.